my album and you came down here expecting me to do a lot of routines from the record and I didn't do them, well, excuse me!
This guy was getting people so happy.
I always thought, this just does not happen. And it did.
We found each other through the normal means, really. I was aware of Morgan's work and I loved it. Not only Will You Be My Neighbor, but many other ones. But also he did a documentary on an art movement in California in the 60s that I was around for, called The Cool School. And it featured a friend of mine, Irving Blum. He's over 90 now, but he gave Andy Warhol the very first show in Los Angeles, his very first show, as a matter of fact. And so I had an appreciation, and then I guess you contacted me somehow.
Yeah, I got word that Steve was maybe willing to do a documentary, and I immediately came to New York and wanted to sit down with you.
Well, I had begun cleaning out my memorabilia. You know, I had sold some things at auction to benefit the motion picture home. You know, I had clothes from movies and things like that, and it's things, frankly, I just didn't want to leave for my wife to deal with at some point, you know. So I thought, I'll do the escorting out of some of this stuff. So this is also a way to summarize a life that I, in a way that I couldn't. It would take someone else to do.
He's the most idolized comedian ever.
He reinvented stand-up.
It was a cultural phenomenon.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Steve Martin.
Steve Martin.
I am a wild
What he was doing was unique. It was chancy.
I always thought of him as the door out of the 60s.
I'll say, as a documentarian, Steve saved so much great stuff. So the fact that he had his spiral notebooks from when he was 16 years old, you know, things like that with his homework assignments sometimes, you know, your philosophy notebooks from UCLA, things like that.
Yeah.
You know, it was a trove of Steve's whole
I
life.
noticed there's some misspellings in the movie. Weird, I spelled W-I-E-R-D.
I did notice that.
Yeah, but, you know, you get a pass, except I was in college.
Steve has had the kind of career that touches so many different things I like. So I love the comedy, I love the film, I love the stand-up, but I love art and theater and novels, and that fact that your life goes in these very different directions is something that was really resonant with me.
In philosophy, everything is being broken down. Everything is being rethought. Everything. And I like that.
The feeling that you would solve something grand.
So I started questioning the only thing I had, which was comedy.
There are always challenges to anything you do. You know, the challenge for me is, you know, documentary shows a lot of things about your life, and there's nothing I'm not proud of, but there's things I wish were better, you know, in just terms of quality and material, and so you do have to revisit your failures as well as your successes. Just, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a moment in the second film when we're listening to cassettes of your old stand-up.
Yeah.
And you're so visibly uncomfortable doing that.
Yeah.
That, you know, I'm sure there were many moments that made you squirm by kind of having to.
Yes, there is, because, you know, when you're doing a documentary, you want everything to be so good. Everybody go, wow, that was really good. And then you're listening to something you know is in process, you know, or not good, or not finished. And, you know, if I look back over my stand-up career, which is the first half, you know, I could probably count, you know, 25 shows that I would go, yeah, that was really good, you know, out of 1,000, you know. But I'm not being self-critical. I'm just saying it's just the way it is.
Glad you're not filming this because it'd be so embarrassing.
Why don't I interview you as we're driving?
It's called Viking, but sure.
My whole life is backwards. How did I go from riddled with anxiety in my 30s to 75 and really happy?
How did this happen?
Don't you have a score of servants take your laundry over?
Actually, I'm just doing this for camera. It's the first time in 27 years.